The OECD has just published the latest edition of its Economic Outlook, which shows that a recovery is taking hold in the global economy. For INSEAD Knowledge, I asked Carlo Padoan, the OECD's chief economist, to tell us what are the main conclusions of the Economic Outlook.
There is a recovery underway. It's becoming stronger and more broad-based. It is, however, also a multiple-speed recovery because, of course, emerging economies are growing much faster than advanced economies. And within the group of advanced economies, some are growing faster than others.
That's all very good news, but there are patches of slow growth and high unemployment, such as, for example, in Spain, where we've just seen protest elections. How do you see the prospects for unemployment and for an improvement in overall employment levels?
Unemployment has gone up significantly after the crisis, including in its long-term component. And this is a source of concern because the long-term could turn into structural unemployment. Unemployment overall is slowly declining, but it's still very high. And this matches, unfortunately, with previous experience of recessions which have seen unemployment lagging behind growth for a long period, around 2 years. So that is a challenge, and we recommend a number of measures that exactly deal with the need to avoid structural unemployment, meaning targeting the weak segments of the labor market, young people, improving skill matching through appropriate mechanism, and also using, in the cases which may be necessary, tax cuts on labor, so to encourage labor demand where it is still weak. As far as a number of countries in Europe that are concerned, like Spain, of course, these countries are in a particularly delicate situation because of the situation of financial distress in the case of Spain and outright financial crisis in the case of Greece and Portugal and Ireland. And they're paying a toll in terms of high unemployment.
In this edition of the Economic Outlook, you expressed the idea that imbalances can actually be a good thing under certain circumstances. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Payment imbalances can be good or bad. In general, we should need some imbalances because they indicate that savings is being reallocated globally. And that is good because in the long term it supports growth. Some imbalances are not sustainable, however, so one must look at ways to make those imbalances good imbalances. What do I mean by that? It is important, for instance, that foreign direct investment rather than debt flows characterize those imbalances because that means that resources are being transferred in ways that are conducive to growth. We have recently done some analysis that says that structural reforms in countries also have an impact on the size and the composition of capital flows. And we identify measures that tilt the composition of capital flows towards foreign direct investments.
You emphasize the need for structural reforms. Can you tell us what sort of structural reforms you're looking for?
Well, structural reforms can have multiple dividends, but they are also country-specific. So, for instance, large surplus countries in the emerging world, like China, could benefit from measures aimed at improving social security and the pension system. This would reduce household savings and therefore boost growth, improve the welfare, but also allow for lower current account surpluses. In countries such as Germany, which has also a current account surplus, we would recommend measures to increase investment, for instance by liberalizing the service sector, which would decrease the current account surplus while boosting growth. So we would have a double dividend from structural measures. And of course, also in deficit countries where, for instance, savings are too low, we would recommend reforms of the tax system that would constrain excessive indebtedness, therefore reducing the current account deficit and increasing resilience of the financial system.
These recommendations aren't exactly new. The OECD has been saying this sort of thing for some years now. What signs do you see that governments really are ready now to tackle these issues?
Well, we are living in a policy environment in which the traditional policy instruments, fiscal policy, monetary policy, cannot be used anymore to boost growth, which is badly needed. So structural reforms have always been there, but now they are more useful than ever because they are actually the most powerful instruments to boost growth and deal with large imbalances. We have not seen much of an effort to renewed structural reforms in countries. Countries are suffering a little bit from fatigue having to deal with the recession. At the same time, structural reforms must be adopted also because we know that most OECD countries are facing very important fiscal consolidation requirements, which rules out the possibility of using fiscal policy for short-term expansionary purposes.
The global economy also faces other types of risks, such as natural disasters. We had the Japanese tsunami earlier this year, and now the Icelandic volcano seems to be rumbling again. How do you assess the potential impact of risks of this sort on the global economy?
Well, of course, there have been short-term impacts from the Japanese disaster, which have led to a significant drop in Japan's GDP growth. However, we forecast a very strong rebound in the second half of 2011, which would bring growth in Japan again in positive territory in 2012. These are the effects we can measure with the available information. There are, however, other possibly unforeseen events tied, for instance, to the fact that Japan is a key player in global value chains, and so disruption of Japanese contribution to that might feed back into global activity in ways that need to be understood fully.
There are also political events that weigh on the world economy, such as in recent months the Arab Spring, the events in the Arab world and North Africa. How do you see these events affecting future growth prospects for the world economy?
Well, again, the events in the Arab world and in North Africa are of course dramatic, and some of them are still unfolding. Hopefully they will unfold quickly and the bloodbath will come to a stop. But looking beyond this again is a great opportunity. There is a huge potential, especially in terms of human resources in those countries, which need to be directed in ways that are, first of all, beneficial to the populations of those countries. And one way of doing that is to find the appropriate models of integration of those economies with the Mediterranean basin, with the European economy, and with the global economy at large. Let's not forget that these countries are young. Their population is very young with respect to, say, Europe, and therefore their greatest advantage looking forward is to have human capital enhancing mechanisms, education systems that are conducive to growth and are doing so in a way that makes the most out of deeper integration.
With events like this taking place, this surge of young people entering the labour market, not just in the Arab countries, but throughout Asia and in Latin America, would you say that we are now entering a new phase of globalization?
We are entering a new phase for that reason and for other reasons. I would say that one reason is the new important dramatic events in that part of the world, but also new ways of looking at growth, both in advanced and in emerging economies. I think that there is a growing understanding of how to reshape growth in ways that are favorable to the environment, but also possibly producing new sources of growth. Green growth, which is a very general term, can mean a dramatic change in consumption patterns, in preferences, in production patterns, in the way technology is put to the service of growth. This, of course, will require new skills. Some of those skills possibly are not clearly identified yet, or at least not to my knowledge. Again, green growth is an example. There we would need innovation to play a key role, so we would need skills that are useful for a multidimensional concept of innovation, where we are not talking only about technological innovation, but also organizational, logistical, firm-level innovation, while at the same time being green. What I mean is that we think that innovation will be essential to make the world greener, but not all new innovation is green by definition. So one of the skills that will be needed is how do we identify the quote-unquote right skills for the right innovation. In some cases, there are low-hanging fruits that, for instance, we can identify new consumption patterns, new housing, new landscaping, new transportation systems. So skills that combine knowledge of urban lifestyles with technology that is green, for instance, that is immediately transferable to the households in ways that are immediately understandable and then can put households in the position to select what they want. So to make the consumer more a leading part in determining consumption pattern. That has a lot to do with culture, with information, but also with technology. And so you need to combine different skills. In the longer term, what we need is brand new energy sources. So there I would say skills that deal with energy science, with all that has to do with sophisticated engineering will be more needed than ever, because we need to make breakthroughs, and we don't know yet when and to what extent in practice we will get those breakthroughs. But certainly we need to invest a lot in those areas, knowing that results will come up, will take a couple of decades to bear fruits.
Carlo Padoan, thank you very much for talking to us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you.